And I'm just going to start recording as well.
So, Dr. Noor. Dr. Noor is here.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. Noor from Humanity First Australia. I begin today by acknowledging traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respect to their elders, past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Thanks. I would like to welcome Humanity First Australia presenters and Lions Club presenters. This session is organized in joint venture of Humanity First Australia and Lions Club. I would like Dr. Amir to invite our presenters. Thank you very much, Dr. Amir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Noor. Good afternoon. Welcome to webinar on treatment for diabetes and weight loss and how to deal with mental health issues in lockdown. I begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we are gathered today. I would like to pay my respect to their elders, past and present, and I extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here with us today. First of all, it's a brief introduction of our presenters. I am the host and my name is Amir Mahmood and working as a GP in Launceston, Tasmania. So our first presenter is Dr. Sundar Subaram, and he has been working as a GP in Tongabi in Western Sydney, New South Wales, and practicing from the past 35 years. And he has been catering to a large multicultural population, and his main interests are in preventive health, diabetes mellitus, asthma, children, and the needs of the older population. He has been awarded many awards by various organizations, including the Order of Australian Medal, which was awarded for his achievement and merit in service to humanity. Well done. Our second speaker is Mrs. Rani Sundar. She is having a nursing background of 40 years, trained in Sydney, has worked in New South Wales hospitals, and now has been working with Dr. Sundar's GP practice for past 20 years. And she has a special interest are preventive health, diabetes mellitus, women's health, and she talks to community organizations, including the Lions Club and Asha Foundation. And the third speaker is Dr. Syed Mutahir Jamal. He is a senior medical registrar and working in Fiona Stanley Hospital, Perth, Western Australia. And one of our member is Mr. Sunil Wadhwa. He is from Lions, and he had been a secretary of Lions Club of Sydney last year. And he is IT consultant by profession, and he's keen and willing to get involved in social welfare activities. So welcome again. And to start our program, our first presenter is Dr. Sundar, and I will like that he should talk and speak on diabetes mellitus. Dr. Sundar, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dr. Sundar from Tongabi. I am a general practitioner. I'm going to talk about diabetes and the history of diabetes, more importantly than diabetes itself. Just simple term for you, what is diabetes? Diabetes is nothing but a small chronic condition with high sugar in your blood, which is not excreted in the urine or in the blood. So the sugar level goes very high, and the symptoms are you got fatigue, tiredness, loss of weight, poor appetite, and also got other issues like cardiovascular, kidney problems, eye problems. So as I said before, the amount of sugar in the blood is called diabetes. What is diabetes? What cell is that? Who founded diabetes? What's the name of diabetes? Diabetes, the name given by Greek people, diabetes, the sweet urine. So we go back 1952 when a Egyptian physician by the name Hissi Lam documented frequent urination as a symptom of mysterious illness. This mysterious illness caused emaciation, loss of weight, and death. Around that time, Asian healers noted that ants seems to attract the urine and they had a sweet taste. That's why they came the sweet urine. So before that, what happened then? In 6th century, Suchitra, an Indian healer, called diabetes Madhu Meha. Madhu means honey, Meha means sweet urine. He called this Madhu Meha because they found they identified urine is the sign of sweet urine issued in by the ants, consumed by ants, which they call diabetes. So we go back again in ancient history again. The diabetes term came from Greek doctor Apollos Malophis, who called it diabetes means sweet urine. And all that joined together in 1795, an English doctor said, well, we put the name, a common term, diabetes mellitus. Mellitus again means sweet urine. This so came the history of diabetes. Now, in 1921 onwards, 1850 to 1921, there was no real medication for diabetes. A lot of people were short-term livers for this diabetes. They put on very strict diet and minimal carbohydrate intake. This went on for a life to prolong the life of the people with diabetes. But in 1921, two doctors by the name Banting and Frederick, what they did, they extracted insulin from pancreatic of the dog and injected into the human being to reduce the sugar level. That's how the insulin was found in 1921, exactly 100 years ago. We celebrated in June, in June, the founding of insulin 100 years now. As I said before, the insulin was found, and after that, multiple different types of insulin came around. 1970, what happened was the pharmaceutical company genetically engineered bacteria to produce human insulin. This is called first insulin in 1970, 2 million insulin. Then the modified insulin in different categories, short term, long term, which are using now. In the meantime, with diabetes, as you all know, it can only be controlled by diet and exercise, physical activity, cannot be cured. One day, I think we might get a cure for diabetes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sundar. It was very simple and easy to understand. And now our next speaker is Mrs. Rani Sundar, and she will talk about the management of diabetes mellitus. Rani Sundar, please.
Thank you, Doctor. Good afternoon to everybody that has tuned in. I've been asked to talk about diabetes and weight loss medications. Thank you for asking me. So, Dr. Sundar has just given a brief idea of what diabetes is about. So, there are two types of diabetes. One is type 1 diabetes, and then there is type 2. The type 1 comes with young age. Type 2 develops in the older age. So I will be limiting myself to type 2 diabetes, that occurs in the later stages of life or middle stages of life. So how do we measure diabetes? How do we know, apart from detecting sugar in the urine and all those things, how do we actually know what is the level of control a person has on their diabetic state? So there's a measurement called BMI, which is short form for body mass index. I mean, HbA1c. I've gone to BMI too early. HbA1c. HbA1c measures the level of glucose in your bloodstream. So it's not the daily glucose level, it is the level of glucose taken an average over a period of 3 months. That gives an accurate indication, almost accurate indication of the level of control an individual has over the blood sugar levels. So a normal HbA1c is below 5.8%. Anything above that comes into the diabetes range. And when you do a blood test and your level is 6 or so, the doctor will be calling you in for a chat. So that's the HbA1c level. Every diabetic person should have the HbA1c level measured every 3 months if they are not under good control, or every 6 months if they are stabilizing. So that's a measurement of diabetes control. Now, obesity, we're going to talk about weight loss. So we're going to have to look at what overweight is about. How do we know that a person is overweight or obese? So for now, people don't like the term obese. If someone said, I'm obese, I'll feel a bit affronted. So overweight is a much more friendly term. So how do we know that one is overweight? There's a measurement called BMI, body mass index. A formula is used to calculate a person's BMI using the person's height and weight. That will give a certain measurement per a kilogram per square, whatever, So when you have a reading of up to 25, like between 18 and 25, you are in normal weight. Below 18, you're underweight. So being underweight is not our concern today. We're going from normal weight, which we will say, yes, good man. But when your BMI goes to 25 to 29, you are coming into the overweight range. Anything above 29 is excessively overweight, which they will class as obesity for medical terms, obesity. So when you are in the normal weight, you're congratulated. Yes, carry on, do what you're doing. When you become overweight, you are coming into the overweight range, you will start getting some advice about do a bit of physical exercise, mind your diet, choose your foods wisely. So when you have an HbA1c that's above normal level and your weight is also above 30, then you are a cause for concern. But by the time you come to this stage, you would already have been seen by the GP, you would have had diet discussed, you would have had lifestyle discussed. In the early stages of diabetes, it's a two-pronged approach, diet and exercise. If the patient is very diligent, he follows a diet and exercise program quite diligently, he's able to bring his A1C into normal range, and he can bring his weight down by a few kilos, then he's congratulated and advised to continue the same. But as we get older, it becomes a bit more difficult. It's a bit harder to shed the weight. It's a bit harder to bring the HbA1c down. So what happens? Some oral medications are added. The doctor adds some medication to help digest the foods, utilize the sugar that's converted from the food into energy to be used. So the principle behind diet and exercise is each molecule of glucose that floats in our body is a unit of energy. This energy has to be utilized. That means we have to run, walk, work, live, jump up. We have to do all those things. So we burn that up as fuel. The glucose is burnt up as fuel. When we don't use up a lot of it, then that sugar is stored in our body as glucagon to be used later. it's like, charging a battery and keeping there for later use. Yeah? So when we find it hard to shed weight and we are storing more glucose in the form of glucagon, our weight gets bigger and higher. So the doctor then would have gone through the oral medications, the insulins to help promote more insulin secretion. He would have gone through all that. But when a person comes to stubborn state where the weight is not going down, the sugar is not coming down, and the patient is getting frustrated, it's quite a difficult situation. This is when now there are some new medications on the market. A lot of research has been happening. 2 new oral medications were introduced. I'll give you the names, but we are not advocating the drugs, we're just mentioning this. So one is Farxiga, the other one is Jardiance. They found when they gave these medications to help control the diabetes, there was an added benefit of weight loss as well, which was a very pleasant kind of surprise in the initial stages. So they were, along with the usual Diabex, the metformins that diabetics used to take, and few other diabetic medications, the addition of these 2 medications helped bring the H1C and help lower the weight as well, which was very, very nice. Unfortunately, one of the side effects of those oral medications was the excess sugar was being excreted through the urine. Like the body took enough of what it wanted, and the excess sugar molecules were being excreted directly through the bloodstream, through the kidney, and into the urine. So they were coming out with all this excess sugar, and if that sugar was thrown on the ground, all the ants will come around to, feed upon that particular spot because it would have so much sugar. The unfortunate part of that medication was the patients suffered extreme irritation at the point of urination on the body. They would be very irritated. They were running to the toilet more frequently. It was causing a lot of discomfort. So the positive effect was being made a little bit sour by this uncomfortable experience of running to the toilet and the personal discomfort. And some of them just chose to go off it, especially people who were in big jobs. They would be in a meeting and they couldn't quite run to the toilet, and interrupt the meeting, or they felt uncomfortable and they could not do anything about it. So those medications had those side effects. Then more research was done and some injectables were brought about. This in the form of an injecting medicine, the pathway was different. They belong to a group called GLP-1, these injectables. They imitate a hormone in our body that says you've had enough to eat, you don't really want to eat that anymore, you don't have the appetite, or you feel full, you can't eat much more. Those sort of messages that our body used to have. This injectables were mimicking that hormone and giving that feeling. So when the diabetics had this injection, they stopped eating frequently. They ate less because the appetite was less. And therefore they could spend more time choosing the kind of food that they should eat. So by this time, they would have had enough education to know which food converted into excess glucose, which foods to avoid so that they did not have excess glucose running in their body, which foods to eat so that they have more energy in the form of protein. So they would have had diet education. So these injectables, when they gave these, they did not have the irritation that the oral medications had. And also, they were weekly injections, except for one injection. The other injections were given weekly. And it was a very, very convenient medication for people who were in high-profile jobs or public jobs. They only had to inject themselves once a week at home, and they didn't have to worry about anything else. They didn't have to run into their room and get an insulin shot or whatever. They had to do it just weekly, and that was very discreet and very personal and very convenient for them. And the added benefit was noticed when they lost weight. So it was a very, very nice thing to see when a patient came in. They had been on these injectables and these other medications, and the weight loss had happened. It's not a rapid weight loss, it's a slow but steady weight loss. It happened, and that was a side benefit, not a side effect. It was a side benefit of this medication. And the more promising thing and encouraging thing was the patients felt better. They felt encouraged. They felt motivated that the A1C levels were coming down, the weight was coming down, they had more energy in themselves. So they were more motivated to follow diet and exercise regime. They were more motivated to feel more relaxed about their diabetes, take it as a lifestyle thing rather than a disease. And they were becoming better managers of their diabetes itself. So they were taking responsibility for themselves. So in all this, we always say, while diet and exercise are the main two-pronged attack, medication is to assist you to help manage the diabetes. And that's the role of medication. And of course, as we get older, the body, the organs start getting a little bit, worn out, and therefore they don't work as well. So more medications have to be added and adjusted. So none of this is long-term. None of them are permanent, but they are ever-changing. There's always research happening. So these two injections that have been brought about, these three injections that have been brought about, which is what do you call that? What are the three injections now? Trulicity, yeah. Trulicity, Bydureon, and what's the other one? Ozempic. Ozempic is the very latest one. Ozempic, so without focusing on anything in particular, but just as a group of drugs, they were doing their job in delaying the emptying of the stomach. They were doing their job of utilizing the glucose that was in the body. They were doing a great job of lessening the weight, and they were doing a good job of improving the mental attitude of the patient. Very good outcome. And we have had a lot of patients who went on it for about 3 months and lost a sufficient amount of weight to go off these injections altogether. There were some patients who went on these injections, lost weight too quickly, and they were stopped, that they were seized early in the game. So it's very promising. But in all this process, we still advocate that diet and exercise is a very important aspect of this management, and these medications can only be used with those two diet and diet and exercise in mind. Now, the interesting thing with these weight loss medications as well, these three medications as well, as it was having a good effect on the heart. It was also having good effect on people who had high cholesterol. Not everybody, but in some people. And that was a very good thing in improving the overall health of the patient. And there's really nothing more satisfying than seeing someone who comes in after several months of doing this, sticking to the principles of, good diet, doing exercise, and he comes, he's slim and trim, and he's showing good glucose levels, and he's happy in himself. It's a very good thing, a satisfying thing to see. And and these are prescribed especially for diabetic people. There's one more that can be described, that can be sort of prescribed for as a weight loss medication for people who don't have diabetes, but we won't touch on that. But this one at the moment, Ozempic and Trulicity and Bydureon in their various forms are being, and Byetta are being prescribed. Now, they are only prescribed under certain conditions. You cannot go to the GP and say, doctor, I want that tablet and I want that injection. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. You can, your doctor himself, those who are into preventive health can see this coming, and most of them will suggest these medications to you in the first place. But mostly under the therapeutic guidelines, the government regulations, taking all that into effect, there are certain conditions under which these medications can be prescribed. Your doctor has to go through all these conditions with you and see if you qualify under that condition. Your HbA1c has to be above a certain level. Your BMI has to be above 30 before these medications can be prescribed. If you satisfy those conditions, then you are made aware of the side effects of these medications, especially the injectables, the once weekly injections. You have to be very careful if you have thyroid problems. You have to be careful if you have had pancreatic disorders. So all these things have to be discussed. Your doctor has to tailor an individual plan for you. Pick which is the right one, the most suitable one for you, and then prescribe that. And that has to be together with a proper diet and exercise program. You cannot simply say, I'm taking this medication and let me lose weight. It doesn't work like that. It has to be together with the, so it will be a three-pronged approach. Diet approach, exercise approach, medication approach, and who is responsible for all this? Not any of these by themselves or the doctor by himself. It is us, ourselves, taking a responsibility for our own health and using all these four components to assist us to manage our diabetes. Responsibility comes back to us eventually. The doctor is there to guide us, the specialist is there to guide us, the diabetic nurse is there to guide us, the medications are there to aid us. And we'll all work towards a successful outcome where we say, this man has got a good level, a good control of his diabetes, which means his organs will not be affected. His eyes will not be affected, his heart will be okay, his kidneys will be fine, and his nerves, his feet will be fine, and his circulation will be good. That is the state we are all aiming for. So if to achieve that state, we have to utilize all these four components, then we will do it. So these medications have been very, very helpful, but there's nothing to say that this will be, forever, because research is always happening. There will always be new medications that are coming. There will be better ways of managing diabetes. So we keep our mind open to all these things. But for now, this is how we are managing diabetes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Rani Sundar. Very impressive way. And she has given few tips that those patients who are diabetic, they should not forget about HbA1c, which is very important to be checked after every 12 weeks. And it depends upon the HbA1c level. If it is less than 6, then after 6 months. If it is more than 6, is after 12 weeks. And the other main thing which she has given a message and lesson, that diabetes is a lifestyle modification, diabetes is controlled with a diet, and then the last is the tablet or injections. I'm really grateful for Rani ji that she has explained it a very simple way. Now our next speaker is also very important, and he is a Dr. Syed Mutahid Jamal, and he's going to talk us about that how to deal with mental health issues in lockdown. Dr. Syed Mutahid Jamal Sahib.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much for having me here, Humanity First and the Lions Indian Club. So I'm going to briefly discuss about the potential mental health issues in the lockdown and what resources have we got. I've just made a small presentation as well for the participants to be with me. So it's been rightly focused lately that the virus and the zero transmission itself is important, but in the midst of everything, the people's mental health may be causing more distress and the suffering, especially more than the virus by itself, especially in certain population groups. And we have seen quite a few evidences for that on the recent the riots which have been happening in Melbourne as well. So I will just focus on a few things which can be potentially related to the virus and the lockdowns which are happening. So first of all is the fear of the infection and dying from the virus. So in terms of the physical, apart from the physical health, in terms of the mental health, that by itself increases the anxiety and can increase the anger as well. And there is lots and lots of conflicting information hanging around how the virus acts, how the virus can affect the body, how the virus has got after effects as well. So that increases the confusion among the mass population. In terms of the lockdown and isolation by themselves, they can increase the anxiety and depression among the masses and the exacerbation of the existing mental health conditions in the people, especially people who are affected by pre-existing conditions like post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, depression, psychotic illness. So all these lockdowns can increase and exacerbate these pre-existing conditions. And along with that, it increases the alcohol abuse and the potential other addictions, and also the financial losses, which are last but not the least, and also affecting the interpersonal relationships between the person who are staying at home, including domestic violence. Next slide. So with the actual economic impact, which are the real issues, which increase the degree of the mental health problems in these lockdowns, are the unemployment, people sitting at home, not doing anything, the job insecurity, reduction in the income, increase in the debt and loss of the houses and loss of the socio-economic status. This does increase the stress, anxiety, and depression and the potential addiction among the people who are affected by it. With us, like especially knowing that lots and lots of people are working from home or people have lost their jobs as well. So these are real-time issues which we have to focus on. Next slide. So in terms of the vulnerable group who can be potentially affected by these lockdowns, both physically and emotionally, these are the elderly people who are staying at home, whose main activity, just like with the help of different services, is to go out or go for shopping or go for some recreation. They're potentially staying at home. The people who are already homeless with these restrictions going around, so they can be affected badly. People with pre-existing health conditions, both physical and mental, and the people who are living in the care homes as well. So especially we have come across the situation that in the lockdowns, there is a restriction of visiting the people in the nursing homes, and there is always a restriction when there is a lockdown happening for the people to go out for recreation in the parks or shopping and etc. So these group of populations are vulnerable to poor self-care, neglect, increase in the physical health issues as well while staying in the bed and not doing much properly, and exacerbation of the mental health conditions which have been previously mentioned as well, and the financial stressors and abuse. Next slide. The school children, who also form an important part of the population, the potential issues which are faced by the young kids and young primary school going children are the lack of outdoor activities which they thrive quite a lot on. And especially when we are going to the schools, we have got a set routine. We are waking up at a certain point in the morning. We are doing certain activities during the daytime. We are going to the bed at the particular time, and all the meal habits are associated, and all the meal habits are well in coordination with our daily routine. So aberrant diets are not an uncommon finding when we are faced with the lockdowns and the kids are staying at home. With a disturbed sleeping pattern, domestic violence, and child abuse are the other potential issues which are being faced by the young kids as well. Potential effects on these kids can be isolation, difficulties in adjusting back to the normal life when they are going back to the schools, and increase in the screen times. Previously what they were spending more time in the physical activities, trying to keep themselves fit, active, and healthy. There is a potential that they may be spending more time on the televisions, they may be spending more times on the internet, they may be spending more times on the tablets and all those social application media things. Next slide. So the other population which can be potentially affected is the senior students, the senior high school students, the university students, who are also adversely affected by the periodic lockdowns with certain consequences like diversion from the studies, lack of interest or diversion of the interest, isolation, poor mood states, and there has been lots and lots of emphasis on the teenage mental health as well, and their ongoing issues related to the mental health. Especially, there has been lots and lots of funding, and depending upon what the social interactions they get, and like if they're using the social media more, they're exposed to more like implicit or explicit abuse as well. And the difficulties with the finances, especially for the people who are working along with the studies, and also the substance of abuse addictions like drugs, alcohol, and marijuana, and these sort of things are real-time issues in the community. And especially the lack of physical activity, and last but not the least is it's less thought about, but it's a real-time issue in the community as well, of the self-harm, which we see quite a lot in the mental health population. Next slide. So just a few tips and advices. That the first thing to manage a certain issue, or to be aware of the management of a certain issue, is to be aware of that these are the issues. So we cannot be complacent about the fact that this issue does not exist. We can only manage the issue only if we are aware of that these issues are happening, plus these resources are available. So there are a few issues, and there are a few things which can be tried at home, which I have summarized in this slide. First thing is that, especially the diet, what we are eating, what we are just like doing in our general everyday life affects our mental health as well. So keeping regular with the diet, with the healthy diets, and potentially homemade cooked food, which gives us a good utilization of the time as well, can help us with our physical and mental health. Sleep is an important thing which is ignored quite a lot. So getting good 6 to 8 hours of sleep, avoiding distractions, especially when we are going to bed, and having sleep patterns which are regular, like going to the bed at regular time and then getting up in the morning as well, can help us maintain our good mental health as well. Exercise, simple exercises like yoga, meditation, relaxation techniques, and especially there are quite a few social media and there are quite a few online activities available as well, which are quite a few services are available free of cost. Some services can be just availed in only a few dollars. They have got their the trainers as well, which can give you personal advices, and they can give you set plans of the diet and the exercise, which we can imply to actually get ourselves into a healthy routine. The next one is improved family, friends, and community relationships with the appropriate use of the communication platforms and the social media, rather than just like using them to waste our time. And hobbies, with the book reading or things we enjoy. So we can incorporate these things in our daily routine lives to keep ourselves physically and mentally healthy. The next step is seeking expert help. There should not be any shame in seeking expert help. There has been lots and lots of massive recent funding in the mental health, both at the federal level and at the state government levels as well. We can always utilize our GP to discuss the basic issues, challenges which we're facing in the lockdowns, and they are very happy to facilitate us with the resources which are available to be explored. Psychologists and counselors are available who are happy to talk, who are happy to discuss the issues and provide you with cognitive behavior therapy and how to deal with the stress, anxiety, and the depression and things like that without being going on to the medications. And last but not the least, mental health services are always available. People who are getting extremely depressed, they're extremely anxious, and their mental health condition are exacerbating, they can always be referred to the specialist mental health services. So this was my brief talk. Would be happy to take any questions at the end of the discussion. But the take-home message is we should be aware of the fact that the mental health issues are real. We should not be shying away from them. The best way is to talk about them and seek help when it is desired. I thank you very much all for listening to me.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Syed Mutahir Jamal. Again, this was our third speaker, and he has explained in a wonderful way about the effects of lockdown according to the age group. And the takeaway home message is increase your physical activity, increase your social contact, involve in your hobbies, have a good healthy diet, and go for helps which are available. Now it's a time for some question answer, and we have received few questions. And my first question, which I will invite Dr. Sundar, that if he can just answer that one. The question is that what are the long-term side effects of diabetes medications, including injections?
Term effects of diabetic medication.
If the person's diabetes is under control, if the HbA1c is more than 7.2, we're taking medication, too many medications on the top of diabetic medication, there will be interaction with other medications. So the more medication you take for elderly people, the kidney functions comes down. They get nephropathy, or from kidney they get nephropathy. Now when you get nephropathy, you won't be able to take as many insulin diabetic medication as you like. There are limited type of medication. The complications are from the diabetic medication. Hyperglycemia, very, very common. You get the sugar lows very low. When the sugar gets very low, you feel dizzy, you become butterfly in the stomach, you got thirsty, you feel unwell, you feel all the symptoms of hyperglycemia. What do you do when you get hyperglycemia? Make sure that you have some sugar, or lolly, or a couple of teaspoons of orange juice, whatever it is in the hand. Take it immediately, that will bring the sugar up, so you feel better. The common complication of diabetic medication, hyperglycemia. That you remember that.
Kidney.
Then comes the kidney damages. If you take long-term medication of diabetic medication, it can cause some sort of some kind of inflammation on the top of the kidneys, which reduces some of the sugar going to the system. That we call nephropathy. When it's inflammation of the calyces of the kidneys, that's one a small complication of diabetic medication, but other things, nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, cramps, all these normal complications of any drug and diabetic drug also. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm really grateful, Dr. Sundar, that yes, there is no doubt that once we use some chemicals, on one hand we have the benefits, on the other hand there are some side effects. But we have to measure that either the effects are more effective or we look for the side effects. But it is all the check and balance, and the check and balance is in such a way that have a regular review from the GP, and there should be a regular sessions for some other allied health services, which we will talk a little bit after a few more questions. And the next question is from Rani ji, that what are the precautions for a normal person not to fall into the trap of diabetes?
Yes. Yes, when do I win lotto? How do I not win lotto? That's more like it, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's very hard. It's very hard. There are lots of things that eventually gets you into getting diabetes. One could be the family history. if there are genetic factors, sometimes you just can't help. In older age, you might get diabetes yourself. But how could we not get into diabetes? If we get from day one, we start being very conscious of diet, be aware of foods that convert into glucose, try not to consume too much of that, or time the consumption of such foods so that when they get converted into glucose, we do sufficient exercise that day, some form of exercise to spend that energy. As long as we have in mind that every unit of glucose is a source of energy, that energy is fuel for the body to do physical work, physical activity. If we remember that from the beginning, we organize our food intake so that it is not a high carbohydrate intake. There is little or no sugar in our food consumption, and we have sufficient exercise to burn off that energy. If we don't if we don't use that energy, we must remember it gets stored in our body, and mostly it is in belly fat. So I was thinking about it the other day. I drive a hybrid car. This car will use petrol when it is pushed, but most times it will run on electricity. Now that electricity, that the power that is stored in the battery is generated as I run the car. So it runs. And I only use the petrol when there's no battery there's no battery power in the car, or if the car goes uphill. So it's same with our body. We have got stored energy in our belly fat. And I thought this was very interesting. I thought, we have got stored energy in our bellies here, in our body. We should use this up. Instead of using this, if we put more sugar, more glucose, more carbohydrates, and this becomes more glucagon, then it only becomes stored here, and we get into a state of diabetes, and then we end up having to get medications to utilize our stored fat. So if from the beginning we are conscious of expending our energy, we use up a lot of the energy, we put back just what we need in the form of food and expend that again. If we did it that way, we stay off becoming diabetic at a later stage. But if we have got genetic factors, sometimes we can't help it. If mother had diabetes, father had diabetes, grandfather had diabetes, we're also prone that way. And sometimes our genetic disposition, where we came from, that also can lead us into the diabetic range. There was a study done a very long time ago. I cannot quote the study because I don't know exactly where and when it was done, but they tested a group of people from one portion of India, and then they tested a portion of people who came from that particular area and settled in another country. So they had two groups of people, this people in this area, in this particular geographical area, and then they had this people who had come from this area, and they looked at the diabetic incidences, and it was the same for this people and this people. So what can we say? Sometimes we are behind the 8 ball. So if we are going to put an effort into avoiding diabetes, we just take care of our exercise, we take care of our diet and nutrition, and we go and have regular checkups with the doctor so that we can detect it early and take further precautions.
Yes, Dr. Rani, again, your very different style of explaining with hybrid car. You are right. It is really a hybrid car maneuver. Those who are having this hybrid car, they can understand very easily. And there is no doubt that with the things, what in short we can say that what I say to my patients, that whenever you want to eat, just ask one question, I want it or I need it. So most of them, they decide said, yes, I want it. I said, yes, then you can think about that. Do you need it? So most of the people, they make their plans. So the next question is from Dr. Mutahir, that people having the mental health issues, they are on some antidepressant, and what are the effects taking the antidepressant with the medication with the diabetes?
Right. Thank you very much. So, so essentially, the antidepressant medications which are currently in use are the selective serotonin receptor inhibitors, and then the tricyclic antidepressants are not much commonly in use. Previously, the people used to be on the tricyclic antidepressants, which had lots and lots of drug interactions in terms of like dryness of mouth and constipation and frequent interaction with the other medications. But that is not true with the recent medications, which have been like developed after quite a number of trials. Especially in the context of being on certain medications, the most commonly used diabetic medications are the metformins, or the dimicron, which is the gliclazide, and the GLP-1 agonists. They do have limited interaction with the antidepressant medications as well. So I would say that there is not much interaction, and the specific drug interactions can be always looked into if certain people or certain population groups are on a certain number of medications. There is an online drug interaction checking calculator, which is called druginteractions.com or the drugs.com, in which you can check even up to interactions of 2, 3, or 4 different medications. We, being as medical professionals, are sometimes not well versed with the newly coming drugs and the specific interactions between the different group of medications, and we normally revert back to the drug interaction calculators as well, which are quite useful. But to my understanding, not much. There can be some drug interactions with antibiotics, or there can be some drug interactions with certain painkiller medications, which a number of people in the community are on. The antidepressant medications can specifically interact with some painkiller medications, which are the opioid medications, and those medications can increase the effect of the antidepressant and side effects, but diabetic medications are safe to be taken with the antidepressants.
Thank you. Thank you again, Dr. Mutahir. Now the next question is from Raniji, that one of the person has asked that if my sugar is 5.7, how can we control through diet, and what is the diet recommendation? And I will add one question along with that one, that most of the people, once we discuss about the diet regarding the diabetes, they say, oh doc, this is very boring. So how you can answer that one, that they should not feel boring while selecting the diet, so that should be feeling that they are eating a right diet, please.
Yes. Food, rather than diet, diet, when we say diet, it places a lot of limitations on the mind, So I like to call that food choices. You choose the food. And when we choose food, we have to have an understanding how that food is going to transform itself into our body. Yeah. So vegetables will transform themselves into, high nutrients and, vitamins and all that sort of thing. Proteins will become, will transform themselves to provide some energy and power and improve our muscle and all those things. Carbohydrate varieties, which are like rice and potatoes, those starchy foods will, when they come into our body, they will be transformed into a sugar form, a glucose form, so that they can be absorbed into the system. Once we understand the nature and the character of foods, choosing food becomes good, easier. Yeah. So if we know our diabetes, your sugar is 5.7, that means you're sitting on the fence. If you go that way, you're going to come into the diabetic range. If you stay this way, you are still okay. So why don't we just say, I don't want to put more glucose into my body. I don't want to get more food to convert into sugar in my body, because I'm already functioning at a good level. So enough carbohydrates to give me energy, not too much. Now, with our Southeast Asia population, we are so into rice and this sort of starchy grains and things. And most of it is white rice. The nutrients have gone off with the husk, and we're only eating the white rice, which is converting into sugar when we eat them. We have white sugar. We have potatoes, you know, aloo this and aloo that and aloo everything. And we have got various kinds of rice dishes, which are gourmet dishes. And we are used to eating a large amount. We have to orientate our mind now that we don't need such large serves of food. Rice doesn't have to be the basis of our dinner. It could be vegetables. I tell all my patients now, especially the ones that have come from Asia, don't let rice be the basis of your food. You know, twist it, turn it around, put the vegetable. Your spinach is the basis of your food, and you put rice as your extra accompaniments. When you change your attitude, your choice of foods also becomes a bit easier. You have a plate full of green vegetables with some papadums and some rice, just enough, just a handful of rice, a potato if you want, you know, some yogurt, all those things. If you have them on the plate, looks interesting, and it is a safe plate because it doesn't go into your body and turn into dynamite. You know, it's very good. It is full of nutrients. You know, when you eat that, you don't feel like you are so full of food. You just feel like you're just nicely, shall I say, fulfilled. You know, being fulfilled is much better than being just bloated food or being overeating. Yeah? So when we take this kind of things, food choices don't have to be boring. Food choices can be interesting. When we sit together, let's have this bowl of vegetables with such and such a thing as accompaniments. In that way, when we had the Onam Sadhya, which is a Malayali festival, it's a banana leaf full of accompaniments. You may have about 26 accompaniments, 26 of them maximum. And you will have a little bit of rice. And that rice is not white rice, it is red rice. It's rice that doesn't have the skin taken off it, the husk taken off it. It's very, very good rice. You know? When you look at that, you could easily eat all the accompaniments and not have the rice. And you would still feel full. And you could still feel like you have dined very well. You know? So you can make your dinner time very interesting. Whoever is cooking dinner that day could put a bit more thought into it, because the welfare of the family is in the concern of the person who cooks. So the person who cooks then can work out, let's make so much of this, so much of this, so much of this. Make sure the children eat properly. Make sure the person with diabetes has less carbohydrates and more proteins, more vegetables, more nutrients. This is all a question of turning your mind and your attitude around, not have the old habits, but have newer understanding of food and use it to our lifestyle. That way, we can stay off, we can put diabetes away further and further.
That's good.
Right.
So I
So,
give one example, one small diet for you. Rani makes it. Very interesting diet, not boring one. Mix all the vegetables fry all the vegetables in the cooker. Get the pasta, boil the pasta very nicely. Add pasta salt, put all vegetables inside there. And if you want hot, please put some chili oil or a hot place. Put some lemon, and that is one of the best dish for diabetes. Pasta with all vegetables, simple dish, very attractive, very nice.
Less
I can
pasta,
send you
more vegetables.
we'll send you the menu for you.
So in that one, the pasta will be enough for just one individual. It's not a plate of pasta. It will be just enough, but you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know. You would think you're having a plate of pasta, but it's not. You know, and the children when they eat it, they don't realize they're eating all the vegetables with a bit of pasta in between. You know,
Thank you.
can be done.
It can be done. That's what Baba Verghese.
That's right.
That's why Baba Verghese.
No, thank you for that. The time is coming to close, but still a lot of things that if we keep on discussing, I think it can take another hour, right? At the end, that's a time to give some time to Mr. Sunil also. And just I will finish the talk in a sense that diabetes, make it as a friend, and there are a lot of services available, and roundabout you can go to and talk to your GP. There are 9 services you can offer through a care plan, which is known as GP management plan, team care arrangement, which include endocrinologist, diabetologist, diabetic educator, dietitian, optometrist, podiatrist, pharmacist, psychologist, respiratory physician, cardiologist, you name it. Everyone is available as a team for any person who is having that I'm having diabetes. Don't feel alone. This is a continuation of what we have been doing. So take away message is that I want it or I need it. And now at the end, I will request Sunil Wadhwa that as a vote of thanks for all the things what we have tried and to continue in future. Mr. Sunil Wadhwa.
Yeah, at the end, on behalf of Lions Club of Sydney Indian and Humanity First, I would like to thank Dr. Sundar, Mrs. Rani Sundar, Dr. Amir Mahmood, and Dr. Syed Motair for taking some time from their busy schedule and sharing valuable information to all our listeners. Indeed, the information provided is going to be very useful and everyone will get some benefit out of it. Particularly, I'm thankful to Dr. Amit Mahmood for facilitating and hosting the whole session. I also would like to extend our thanks to the IT team from Humanity First for preparing innovative flyer, setting up Zoom and YouTube streaming. Last but not the least, big thanks to our audience for active participation. And yeah, thanks everyone and have a wonderful rest of the evening. Thank you.
And thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Good night and see you next time again. Okay, bye.